Death and the Little Girl. The surface of the lake in the emerald green park was still, mirror-like, reflecting the azure sky. In the middle of the lake, there was an island on which stood a barren tree, sentinel-like and solitary, at the base of which sat two snow-white swans, as still as statues, looking out silently, serenely, over the water. Some people from the village near the lake said that the swans were only an illusion caused by misty mornings when the air was cool and damp, but the swans could be seen clearly in the light of day. Those who were curious rowed out towards the swans to have a closer look at them, only to see them fade from their sight as they got closer, and vanish into thin air when their boat touched the island. This led some people to believe that the swans were the ghosts of two boys who had drowned in the lake many years before. They were brothers who had gone out fishing for the day. The younger brother had accidentally fallen into the water, and the older one, wanting to rescue him, jumped in to try to save his life. Both boys drowned. After that, the lake had quickly gained a reputation as a place of death, and it was said that whoever touched the water of the lake would die soon after. One day, a little girl came to the park. She had told her mother she was going there, and her mother, a superstitious woman, had warned her, "Do not touch the water of the lake." It was a fine spring day. The sun was shining brightly, and everything felt warm. There was not a cloud in sight in the blue sky, and there was a slight breeze which freshened the air. Everything in the park was in full bloom. Everything, that is, except the tree on the island in the middle of the lake. The little girl was collecting daffodils, which she tied up in small bunches to give away as gifts to people she knew. She had filled her basket to the brim and had sat down at the edge of the lake under the branches of an old weeping willow, where it was cool and fresh. She was tying off the last bunch of daffodils when a giant cloud came across the sun, casting the entire park in shadow. The little girl looked around. How dreary everything had become. Suddenly, she noticed the two white swans on the island in the middle of the lake. She did not remember seeing them before. The swans shone brightly in contrast with the gloom that had overcome everything. The little girl stood up to have a closer look at them. When she did, she noticed a man who was standing between them. The little girl got such a fright that the bunch of daffodils she was holding fell into the water. Her first instinct was to recover them, but she hesitated, remembering what her mother had said. But when she saw the bunch of flowers she had so carefully prepared drifting away, she stepped into the water to retrieve them. Knee-deep in the water, the little girl noticed that the man on the island had stepped into a small boat and was coming towards her. She noticed that the man was wearing a black overcoat, which had silver buckles down the front of it. He was also wearing a black blindfold. The little girl's heart skipped a beat. The boat drifted silently towards her, and, as it did, the man's features became clearer. He was pale and thin, and his face was gaunt and had sharp contours. He had a square chin, prominent cheekbones, and a long, pointed nose. His face had a somber look. He looked as if he were unwell or deeply worried about something. He was bent over slightly and rounded at the shoulders, because he kept his hands clasped in front of him the whole time. His whole posture was suggestive of a man who had been carrying a burden his entire life. The figure approached the shore of the lake, and, bowing his head, he brought the boat to a stop. The little girl stared at him. Never had she seen such a strange person. He looked so melancholy that the little girl pitied him. She imagined him to be lonely, friendless, and despised. So she decided to speak to him. "Hello?" The man did not respond, but, like a blind person who had heard something, raised his head in the direction of the voice. She tried again. "Hello?" Again, he did not answer. "What's your name?" The man turned his head in such a way that he seemed to be looking straight at her. "It's time," he responded. His voice was unhurried, unlabored, and strangely reassuring. "What's your name?" The man did not answer.
I'm collecting daffodils. Well, I was, to make bouquets for my friends. Look!
She offered him the bunch of flowers she had rescued from the water, but when she did, she noticed that all of the flowers in the bunch had died.
Who are you?
The man turned his head and looked off into the distance.
What's your name?
My name? He smiled.
Yes.
There was a silence. I have no name. A shudder shot through the girl's heart.
That's impossible,
she replied. He did not say anything.
My name's Samantha.
I know.
How do you know my name?
It's time, he replied.
What do you mean, it's time?
It's time to go.
Go where?
The man turned around and gestured towards the island in the middle of the lake.
What's over there?
He gave no answer.
Well?
She replied, but the man remained silent.
Are you blind?
No.
Why do you wear a blindfold?
The man gazed off into the distance again.
Do you live here?
The man paused. Yes.
Over there?
She checked, pointing to the island in the middle of the lake. Yes.
What's there?
The man stepped out of the boat and walked towards her. The little girl noticed that he hardly disturbed the stillness of the water as he walked through it. She was frightened and wanted to run, but something prevented her from doing so. The man approached and offered her his hand. Come, he said. It's time. The little girl panicked. It is time, he repeated, gently smiling. Let us go. The little girl hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand in his. When she did, she strangely felt at peace. They walked hand in hand through the water and stepped into the boat. Bowing his head, the boat started to drift towards the middle of the lake. When it arrived at the island, the little girl got out and stepped onto the shore. She turned around, expecting to see the man, but both the man and the boat had disappeared, and all the little girl saw was the water. The sun came out and made the water shimmer. Everything seemed brighter and more vivid than before. The tree on the island had burst into full bloom and was now covered in brilliant white flowers. The little girl wondered where the strange man had gone. She looked around, but he was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, she saw someone on the other side of the lake. She looked closely and noticed it was a woman. She was wringing her hands and walking this way and that, as if she was looking for something.
Samantha!
She heard the woman cry out.
Mother! Samantha! Mother, I'm here!
The little girl shouted back, but the woman did not seem to hear her.
I'm here!
The little girl tried again, but the woman continued looking, as if she had not heard a thing.
She can't hear you.
The little girl turned around and saw two little boys smiling at her.
Come and play with us,
said the younger of the two. The little girl looked at her mother and saw how worried she was.
I should go,
the little girl said.
My mother is looking for me. She won't find you,
said the older boy.
Come and play with us,
the younger one said again. The little girl looked at her mother. She wanted to tell her not to worry, but she knew her mother could not hear her.
Come on,
the younger boy insisted.
Come and see the beautiful angels.
The little girl took one last look at her mother and went off with the boys.
Samantha!
The woman on the other shore cried out, but she was only met with her echo. She came to the edge of the lake and saw a bunch of dead daffodils on the shore. She looked at the water and prayed that her daughter had not drowned. She wanted to go in to look for her, but she dared not touch the water.
Samantha!
She cried out for the last time, but only her echo came back. The woman looked around, but there was not a soul about the place. Only 3 white swans sitting on the island in the middle of the lake, looking out silently, serenely, over the water.